Ineos decided it's not the right time to sack Erik Ten Hag after this week's big meeting. And we've got some updates regarding what was discussed. Injury stories around Mazraoui that have been cleared up. Manchester United are considering buying back Alvaro Fernandez at left back. Plus all the latest transfer rumours and all the latest Manchester United news that will keep you right up to date with everything. Welcome to Man United Review. My name's Jamie. Before we get into it, please smash a like on the video. And let's jump straight into it. So let's kick off with all the Erik Ten Hag latest, as it seems to be still the talk of the town at the moment. So Simon Stone said the following: for now, Erik Ten Hag remains in his job and he is having a few days away from the club as is customary during the break. So unless the situation changes, he will return to begin preparations for the league game with Brentford at Old Trafford on the 19th of October. Fabrizio Romano said Erik Ten Hag has not received any communication on his future from Ineos. Ten Hag remains very calm and is preparing for the game against Brentford. The club is still discussing internally. It's a tense situation. So Romano kind of maybe suggesting that things are not all over regarding the Ten Hag decision. Then we had Rob Dawson from ESPN say that Erik Ten Hag is preparing for the Brentford match as usual and has been in contact with his staff who remained in Manchester during the break. And Samuel Lucker said the natural assumption is Erik Ten Hag will attend the pre-match press conference at Carrington on Thursday, and he will be in the Old Trafford dugout against Brentford 2 days later. So some credible sources there, pretty much kind of sticking with the news that Erik Ten Hag is safe for now, and it's expected to be business as usual, and that he's going to be back from his holiday, which is customary for the international break, and that there's not going to be any news. Romano did hint, though, that potentially there's still internal discussions, which we'll keep an eye on, and that's a tense situation, but majority of the kind of talk in the rumours is that there is no sacking of Erik Ten Hag, we should say, for this international break. And obviously that was always kind of, I don't say likely, the rumours and the media talk was all around this big kind of meeting on Tuesday, which, was always a scheduled meeting anyway. So, and obviously they weren't really going to announce anything. I did say that on, I think it was Monday's video, that I couldn't see that there'd be an announcement or anything because it was a pre-scheduled meeting anyway that was always going to be happening. Now, in terms of what's been said regarding that, Samuel Lucker said United sources said the meeting was pre-scheduled and would not they would not communicate any conclusion from such a rendezvous. Finances, commercial and plans for a new Old Trafford were discussed, as well as the team's performances. And then we've had a couple of interesting updates regarding what was discussed in the meeting. So Graham Bailey said some members of the hierarchy did think the time was right to end Ten Hag's tenure, but they did not come to an overall agreement, which is interesting. The hierarchy are not fully in agreement on who could replace Ten Hag, and Manchester United are not planning on replacing Erik Ten Hag during the current international break. So that's an interesting update from Graham Bailey and what was discussed in the meeting, saying that some of the members of the hierarchy did think that it was the right time to end to sack Ten Hag, basically, but they couldn't come to an agreement overall, which is interesting. But remember, I brought stories before around, around Sir Jim not necessarily being a fan of Ten Hag and favouring Thomas Tuchel, which is interesting. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. And then the Muppeteers said Ashworth and co would rather give Ten Hag more time. Ratcliffe believed that things need to change and doesn't think it's going to work with Ten Hag. Ratcliffe is willing to accept the idea from football people that he should get more time. In the meeting, Ineos discussed replacements, costs, and consequences. What the kind of Muppeteers were effectively saying was that, so going off of that apparently Sir Jim Ratcliffe is not really bothered if they sack Ten Hag, and he's given them almost the go-ahead, but he is relying on his football experts to make that decision. I think if it was down to just Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I think Erik Ten Hag would be gone. And the reports are that he's a fan of Thomas Tuchel. What it looks like is happening, or what potentially could be happening, is that he's maybe learned off of his time at Ineos to not get so involved and leave those sort of decisions to the football experts. So according to obviously those reports, what's kind of being suggested is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is happy for Erik Ten Hag to be sacked. He's happy for him to stay, but he's leaving that decision down to Dan Ashworth, Omar Barada, and and Jason Wilcox. And if they do decide to kind of remove Erik Ten Hag, then he's happy for that to happen. Having taken, like I said, I've learned a little bit off of maybe his time at Nice, where they were a little bit more hands-on to start with, and they did have a high turnover of managers in their first in the beginning until they settled down. They got football experts in, and they listened to their kind of decisions. Let me know what you think about that. So it's kind of going to be interesting, isn't it? And again, the Muppeteers were kind of saying, I think it was in yesterday's video I brought to you, that they're now going to be starting to look at potential replacements a little bit and look at what the consequences are and look at the contingencies as well. Because as it stands at the moment, I don't think they were prepared to be having this conversation so soon into the season. So they haven't really thought about replacements or the idea of having to replace Ten Hag, especially not in October, which has kind of caught everyone a little bit off guard and are a little bit underprepared for it, which, you know, it's fair enough. Why would you consider sacking a manager in October, and who would have thought we would have had, you know, such a horrendous start to the season like we have? So the kind of rumours are that apparently Ten Hag, Sir Jim's like, nah, I'm not bothered if he stays or not, but he's leaving the decision to Dan Ashworth and Omar Barada and Wilcox, and they want to give Ten Hag more time, but obviously how much longer, I think results and performances will tell. That's the way I kind of read into the situation at the moment regarding the manager. But let me know what you think in the comments, because I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it. Obviously, I mentioned there that Thomas Tuchel's been widely reported now that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's kind of, if it was down to him, it would be Thomas Tuchel. So Jim Ratcliffe is understood to like the possibility of Thomas Tuchel taking over. That came from Samuel Lucas, and that's not the first time that we've heard that Sir Jim is a fan of Thomas Tuchel. So again, if it was down to him, it probably would be Ten Hag out and Tuchel in, but it's not down to him. He's leaving the decision to Dan Ashworth effectively, and Omar Barada and those, and they're at the stage now where they're not quite prepared to sack Ten Hag. They want to give him a little bit more time, obviously having backed him in the summer, got him in his coaches and everything like that as well, and they're looking to change the environment behind or above the manager and behind the scenes, so they're not prepared to do it yet. But obviously if performances and results don't improve, then who knows how much longer that's going to be the case for. So now, let's move on to some injury updates. So, Amad Diallo returns to Manchester United after missing Ivory Coast matches. So, Amad Diallo is not playing in the international duties. Apparently, it's just an illness. So, hopefully, it's nothing too serious in regarding Amad. And then, so it's been confirmed that Garnacho with a minor issue, which is precautionary. Mainu, Mount, again injured. So disappointing, isn't it, with Mason Mount? And Maguire we knew about anyway, so a few weeks, could be sooner depending on rehab. And then let's go through the Mazraoui situation. So Mazraoui is being treated and assessed. Obviously, Mazraoui's missing the international breaks as well. And there's been a few kind of stories regarding him. So Chris Wheeler, who's a good source, said that Mazraoui has successfully undergone a minor precautionary corrective procedure, having experienced palpitations. He is expected to make a full recovery and will be available for selection within the next few weeks. Manchester United aren't putting an exact time frame on Mazraoui's recovery, but not expected to be as long as the 2 months being speculated. So the rumours are that he's had some kind of heart condition, and it's an ongoing condition that he's had for a while. So it's known by the club before we signed him, and he had some palpitations and has had a corrective procedure. It's not kind of determined, according to Chris Wheeler, who's a good source, how long he's actually going to be out for. That's a massive concern, isn't it? Because obviously we left ourselves wide open to this in the summer. It was one of my biggest fears in the transfer window, not getting another fullback in, because Mazraoui's injury record is terrible anyway. You were all saying that in the comments, and we were highlighting his kind of injuries when we signed him in the summer, that he's not a player that's going to play every single game. So to leave ourselves so exposed at left back is such a bad decision. So hopefully he'll make a recovery and he'll be back and it will not be serious. And then hopefully after that, Luke Shaw or Malacia can come back, but they're still a few weeks away apparently. So that's a massive concern. Obviously, I wish him all the best. It sounds kind of horrific, but apparently it's just precautionary and it's something that they're aware of anyway, which is good. So they can obviously treat it, but does leave us massively exposed in the fullback area now. United faithfuls, though, however, said the following. Now, they're quite credible when it comes to United injury news. Said that reports that that Mazraoui will be sidelined due to the diagnosis of a cardiac algorithm is very much blown out of proportion. I can exclusively confirm that Mazraoui will be available to play against Brentford after the international break. So we'll have to wait and see kind of what happens in regards to the injury front. But that is a big concern, the fullback. And then obviously Mason Mount, what an absolute shit show that's been. Like, he can't even play. I mean, when did he come on? First half, wasn't it, against Tottenham, because he came on as like when Bruno got sent off, didn't he, as well? Didn't even complete the full game there, and is now out injured again. Like, the guy cannot stay fit for more than half a game, it seems. What an absolute shit show that is with Mason Mount. Obviously, I don't think he's doing it deliberately, but what an absolute, what can you say? What can you say? Let me know what you think actually about Mount's injuries in the comments. It's absolutely ridiculous. I don't think he's played 90 minutes for I can't remember the last time. Start of last season, maybe. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So keeping with fullbacks then, so Manchester United, Real Madrid and Barcelona are closely monitoring Benfica's Alvaro Fernandez as we know him. United have a buyback clause, so that's coming from a Jogo, who are a Portuguese outlet, fairly decent. Not always the most credible though. Portuguese outlets are a little bit kind of, they'll put a lot of reports out regarding big clubs to generate interest, but with the injuries at left back. And I felt that actually at the time when we got rid of Fernandez, not a mistake necessarily at that time, but like we got massively injured. He was out on loan. We had loads of injuries at left back, and then we decided to loan in Reguilon instead of bringing Fernandez back, who I thought actually had a good pre-season that season as well. And then we sold him and didn't buy a left back in January. Like, what a terrible decision. Now we're getting linked to buying him back because he's done all right, because he's doing all right at Benfica. Like, what an absolute mess that is. Imagine that. But let me know in the comments. Would you bring him back? Would you bring Fernandez back from Benfica at left back? I think I would. I think he's done a good job at Benfica. He's looking like a really promising kind of left back that I thought he would be anyway, going off of his preseason and his performances in the reserves. I don't know why we sold him anyway when we're so bad at left back. So I would take him back, definitely. But let me know what you think in the comments. And then a couple of other transfer rumours I'm going to go through with you. So Manchester United look to have been handed a boost as Palmeiras now would be ready to consider selling star midfield player Richard Rios for just 20 million euros this January. That might please a few of you because I know you were keen on him when we were linked with him in the summer. The Colombia international has caught the eye of a number of clubs in the Premier League in Europe, with sources close to the situation informing Caught Offside that Man United are joined by Fulham, Everton, Wolves and AC Milan as admirers of the 24-year-old. What I will say firstly is take that with a pinch of salt. It has not come from the most credible sources for Caught Offside, because they've got hitty-missy journalists that work for them. That was from not so credible journalists. Obviously, we were heavily linked with them in the summer. Had a really good Copa America, very silky midfielder, a player that I remember scouting him and doing some reports on him in the summer, and I remember thinking he looks a really good prospect. 24, so a good age. Obviously unproven in European football, so would be a bit of a gamble and a bit of a risk. I think the fees quoted in the summer were like 60, 70 million pounds or million euros or something like that, which was way too expensive for a relatively unproven in Europe anyway. And when I say unproven, obviously he's older than Ugarte, but unproven in European football. I just don't think it's from the most credible source. Likely, in my opinion, to be media nonsense. So I would say take it with a pinch of salt. Where we're either getting linked with the player to increase his value, so other teams can come in and get to him by putting United's name out there, or to get views and get clicks on a news story. So, but I would say take it with a pinch of salt for now. But definitely would be a good player and a good option to bring in, especially when you consider that Eriksen's going to be in the last 6 months of his contract in January, so he can start to talk to other clubs. So there might be a decision to be made there, whether we would quite have the funds available in January to get a midfielder when we know we're desperate for a left back. I would question that as well, but again, it depends on financial fair play. And we might sell a few more players in January. You don't know, so there could be the option there. But I say take with a pinch of salt for now. But it's one I'll keep an eye on for you. And then the final story I've got for you is regarding Kolo Muani. So Manchester United have reportedly prepared a major bid in the region of £58.6 million for Paris Saint-Germain forward Randall Kolo Muani, as per Spanish reports. That's not the most credible Spanish outlet as well. I will be honest with you straight away. United are ready to go all out and try to bring the France international to Old Trafford in 2025, with PSG ready to listen to offers for the 25-year-old who has struggled for game time this season. So Moani's he's an interesting profile of player, and I wouldn't always judge a player's form by the club that they're at. He's not exactly been outstanding though for PSG, is what I would say. 7 appearances, 2 goals this season. I remember though when we linked with him when he played for Frankfurt, and I think that season he had 34 games, 16 goals and 14 assists, which was unbelievable at that time. And we were linked with him in that summer, and then PSG obviously swooped in and got him. And I remember profiling him again, and I thought he was a really interesting profile of option, like one of those kind of quick forwards that can play off the shoulder of a defender. So a player that I kind of like in that regards, but he hasn't had he's not exactly set the world alight at PSG, but then that's not always necessary. I mean, Mo Salah was terrible at Chelsea. Kevin De Bruyne was terrible at Chelsea. Do you know what I mean? So you can't always judge a player based on their form playing for one club. But it would not for that price for me. For that, I would be giving it a wide berth. £60 million when he's not exactly had the best kind of goal scoring form at PSG would be a bit of a red flag for me. I'd much rather go, and if you're going to go in for a striker, if we are going to go for it, I'd much rather go and maybe have to pay a little bit more, but I'd go and get Gyökeres if it was me for that sort of money, if you're looking at that sort of price for a striker personally. But do take it with a pinch of salt, because it's not coming from the most credible Spanish outlet. Again, one we'll keep an eye on, but for now, I'm going to put that in the nonsense bin. But let me know what you think in the comments, and let me know what you think about all the other topics discussed in today's video, because as you're all up to date with the latest Manchester United news and transfer news, smash a like on the video on your way out. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new, and I will see you in the next one.